this is something that I think the first time the Toronto Sun put it on the front page was during President Hu's 2010 visit. And that's because one of my colleagues, David Aiken, um, someone sent him or he came across a report in Chinese English language media, a government controlled media outlet, and a senior general ahead of whose visit had given an interview where he talked about China being a near Arctic nation. And since they were 20% of the population, they were entitled to 20% of the resources in the
Hmm.
Arctic. And of course, well, we consider the Arctic on this
Hmm.
side ours, and Russia considers parts of it theirs, Norway, Denmark, et cetera, et cetera. And that was 2010. That's 15 years ago. And that interview by the general was not an accident. Those things don't happen in government-run Chinese media. That was put there to send a message that I don't think we properly received, and now we still have people ridiculing the idea that China wants anything to do with the Arctic or is poking around up there. I think, Prime Minister Carney, I'll give him credit. He has
Hmm.
acknowledged it.
Yeah,
But they are floating around Alaska, Nunavut, into Hudson's Bay, and around Greenland. All of that is happening, correct?
correct. I I don't understand the disconnect from the threats that we see in the Arctic and the ones we talked about, and the government just not taking it seriously in activating policy that would help protect our national defense. Why isn't there an Arctic base? Why isn't there more personnel there?
More
Why? I mean,
technology.
or yeah, exactly. And I blame both governments. I mean, not both parties, all governments from World War II on. We have neglected our armed forces, equipment. We have not kept up our armed forces in a way that we can defend our own land. And then we have rising powers like China. We're not prepared. So, uh, Ukraine should have been a wake up call. Now there's continental war and war, kinetic warfare in continental Europe. And we are implementing, I mean, we are increasing our spending, but we should have been doing it all along, you know? So I don't see, I think for some reason there's a disconnect in when the armed forces, our security services advise government, just I think they're being alarmist and they don't take it seriously. And that's concerning.
Well, Michelle Juno Katsuya, former CSIS agent, might tell you that they've been ignoring this since the Sidewinder report came out in, I think, 1997. We've talked to Michelle about that in the past in terms of political interference and elite capture and the like. Perhaps that's part of the reason why they haven't been acting. But let me ask you this: as we do look to rebuild the armed forces, as we do look to build infrastructure in the Arctic, something like Gray's Bay, the port in Nunavut, or Premier Wab Kinew in Manitoba talking about Churchill being there. Should we
Mhm.
look at having dual use infrastructure so that if we are putting in a deep water port in Churchill or Gray's Bay, I'd say we should do both of them and perhaps more. Should they be not only commercial ports for exporting,
Mhm.
should they be have a military use as well for our submarines and such?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to stop thinking that national security and trade and economics are two separate silos. They're not. They're very intermingled. And right now we have to be more proactive at defending the Arctic. And we also have to be more proactive at diversifying trade, expanding trade. So when we do something like create a port, yes, we not only want to do trade, but we want to defend trade. Right? We have to defend our ability to trade. So these things are together. They're interconnected. They should not be looked at separately.